So firstly, and most importantly, what do we do? Some of you may know, next level SaaS data protection. So we are SaaS data protection as a platform. We currently back up 8 SaaS products. I say currently because Jakob might give you a little taste of what's to come. But
Yep.
I guess we're predominantly known in the market currently for what we do in the Microsoft 365 space, Power BI, and Entra ID. We also back up in the dynamic space, Salesforce, Google, and Azure DevOps. But obviously, the theme in the market is around what Microsoft are doing, and the fact that actually the UK is the second biggest Microsoft 365 market in the world after America, and a lot of people still don't know about the shared responsibility market. So why the UK and where have we come from, where are we going? So we say we're being introduced to you. We're not quite brand new. We've been around for a little bit. We've now got in excess of 7,000 customers in some interesting places, including Australia. Millions of users and offices, and really critically to us now, we've opened up in the UK. So we are headquartered in the UK at Warneford Court. For any history buffs, it's the old London Stock Exchange building. So we're right in the heart of it, and we've now got a team of 8 people in the UK. So from an expanse perspective, when I joined exactly 3 months ago, there were 3 of us. So I hope that reflects to you all that the UK is critical to us, and that includes both partner salespeople, and worth mentioning that our route to market is channel only. So we have partner sales and end user sales here in the UK, and then we're supported from Denmark with marketing and from America with those functions as well. 7 data centers.
So I already asked a question.
That's okay.
Just channel only. You're backing up SaaS.
Yes.
Why give away margin?
That's a great question. So
Thank you.
I've always wanted to say to someone that's a stupid question. It is a great question. Certainly from a UK perspective, and we started off as a direct selling business from Copenhagen. Mm-hmm. Certainly in the UK, the percentage of customers who are actually buying any product direct now is tiny. And if I go back to my days at Hewlett Packard, and I'm so old it was actually called Hewlett Packard, and you looked at the sort of pyramid of how they sold, and at the time I think there was 20% of their customers were direct. Mm-hmm. That pyramid now has shrunk to maybe 1 or 2%. So certainly from a UK perspective, we see partners as key, and one of our more predominant partners, Phoenix. Mm-hmm. If you look at some of the customers they deal with from a Microsoft perspective, they're as big as some of the customers Microsoft themselves deal with. So we certainly see the value-added channel as bringing a huge amount to us and partners, and then creating solutions for their customers. I don't believe we're a standalone product, and predominantly in the UK, customers are going indirect.
Okay.
What's your German office? How many people do you employ, and what is your revenue, if you can talk about?
So revenue, I can't talk about, I'm afraid. In Germany, we're based down in Bavaria.
Mm-hmm. Where there?
Munich. We have the office in Munich. Where was the town that I just went to? I had a QBR there.
How many people do you employ?
In Germany, there are 12. Yeah.
And totally?
354, I think, is the exact number.
Right around 350.
Yeah, around 350.
And profitable?
Yes.
I know you just said you can't talk about revenue. We all respect that.
Yeah.
Most of us probably. Can you give us a round number? Are you 1 million? Are you 10 million? 100 million? Just
just in terms of, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I'm going to avoid any revenue questions.
Okay.
If that's okay. I'm sure if you On a separate note, anything we do from a revenue perspective, we do under NDA. What is public knowledge is we were refinanced by HSBC to the tune of $40 million. But as an organisation, we are a profitable organisation. And culturally, our growth perhaps is different from some of the West Coast unicorns in terms of massive expanse, because we expand as we have the money to expand.
Okay.
I'm sorry I can't
No, that's fine.
give answers on the revenue.
We'll always have to ask.
Yeah.
I'll touch a little bit of.
It was early January when the funding news came out.
Yeah.
So that was, for anyone, that was the 9th of January of this year.
Yeah.
$40 million.
US dollars?
Yes.
Yes.
From HSBC Innovation.
At 350 people, that averages $115,000 per person in salary. That doesn't last very long.
It's not.
This was just a refinancing of debt. So this was not something we had no guarantee that this could happen. And this was not something we needed.
Okay.
So we would be we could be cash flow positive even without it.
Okay.
So we have been conservative in that regard, so that when we did get an investment in in 18. I think, we got an A round in 18. We had a product, we could sell it in the market. We spent that all on getting our fair share of the pie, and that's how we have been working. So it's entirely possible we will see an investment in the future too, and then that will be spent on getting our fair share of the pie. But if we don't get that, we're not burning cash in order to undercut competition at the moment. We're fine. We would love to have something to accelerate, but we're fine. So
thank you.
Yeah.
I know marketing would like to dip into that 40 million and spend it. We all would. So great news in terms of the DACH region. We are literally just opening, and as of March the 1st, our Switzerland data center is going to be open. And worth mentioning, all our data centers are private, so they are. In the UK, we have 2 Equinix data centers in Slough, so they are completely run by Keepit and not touched by the public cloud at all. And the way we have those is we have 2 copies, and Jakob will go into this, 2 copies of your data in both data centers. So where we are currently, you may not be able to see the dots, but across many countries, this spreads. I look after emerging markets as well, so Middle East and Africa. I'm actually off to South Africa next week, and I can tell you that part of the world is scaling for us, and the Middle East. So we're growing at a good rate.
How many would you say customers are for that base roughly?
We've got I think it's about 7,500 now.
Okay.
And in the UK, just shy of 300.
300?
Yeah, in the UK. These are very, very European focused. I'll touch on a couple in the UK, but some of these names you'll know in terms of global companies, some of them from Europe. I don't know if it's recorded, but certainly on our website, Porsche is a fairly well-known brand. It's an incredible story to read about, and I highly recommend. Correct. Yeah, not many people have. Yeah, I've actually on my first day at the company listened to them present, and it's a really great story. They have real life problems, which we certainly help with. And we've just got a couple of case studies that are publicly available here in the UK. Both fairly well-known institutions. National Gallery, who are back up there, M365 with Keepit. That was, an open tender process, and Keepit won for its simplicity, which is, what we're really all about, and what Jakob will touch. And Oxford University, they back up Dynamics and M365 through Keepit. And again, you can read both of those in more detail on our website. And in terms of more detail, that's my segue to pass over to my CTO. Hopefully you'll have lots of questions. If you have any other questions about the UK, please file them at me. No? Yeah?
Just one. If you've got 2 data centers in Slough, if people drop bombs on Slough, they both be taken out.
That is correct. So first of all, it has to be a big bomb.
Yeah.
Now you can get those. So that is your backup data. That is not your primary data. So you still have all your data with Microsoft, even if your backup is lost, which is why we place it separately from Microsoft, so that if the same happens with Microsoft, you will still have your backup in Slough. This works for most situations. If you are in a situation where you absolutely must have your data dispersed further apart, then there's nothing stopping you from signing up, for example, on a Sydney data centers and the Slough data centers, and then doing both.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Have you got, I mean, sounds like you've got a target against Slough, but
Well, it's just that something
yeah, no, of
they're
course.
stopping.
Yeah.
yeah.
Would anybody notice?
Sorry if anyone lives in Slough, by the way, before we carry on down this track.
Can you verify that Porsche manufacturer, the VW owned company, is your customer rather than Porsche Holdings Salzburg, which is a distributor?
This is Porsche Holding, which is part of the Porsche Group, but it's not the Porsche Group itself.
Right. So you've got the distribution problem, not the whole. Okay.
True.
Any other questions before I pass on? Jakob, over to you.
Yes. Okay. Well, yeah. So I will just switch the slide, and then since we are new and relatively unknown to you, I will go a little. Well, I will go broad on topics, and I will give you a little bit of background history also, and please ask whenever you feel like it. So first of all, I started working for a CEO back in '98. We were helping companies to get on the internet back then, because that was what was happening in Denmark at the time. We moved into hosting, so both managed hosting and web hosting, both small business and consumer. We had a pure play software company. So we've done various things over the years and been more or less successful on these different ventures. And then around, I think 2008 or so, we started thinking that the cloud was not really a thing back then, but we thought we should do something new, and we should do a backup service. We should run it as a cloud service. We should give this this should be a B2C product. So we would allow consumers to back up their home computers and, yeah.
So I said in an earlier meeting, surely you should be concentrating on restore, not on backup. Constant restore to actually test that the resilience is there, because all you do is back up data. It may not be restored.
Yeah. So and it's a hard sell to tell the customer that you sold them a backup program, not a restore program.
Yeah.
So yes, we had some success with this, but it turns out that really everyone knows someone who lost personal data, wedding pictures, and everything. But from that, and then getting to a point where people are willing to pay for it, that's a completely different planet. So we were never really successful with that. We had some success, but not as we wanted it. We also saw that. So we found out. So at the time, we decided that tape was the way to store large quantities of data. So we had one of the largest tape libraries in Denmark, and we could see that this was not doing what we wanted it to do. We wanted to have this. We want the customer to go into a web interface, and everything should be instant. You should browse your data. It should be today's data or the data of yesteryear. It should be instant when you browse it. You should click the button, download the file, have it immediately. That's what we wanted, and that was what we could not get tape to do that.
So would you think of processing the backup data as a separate exercise, the type series data, and for analysis, offline analysis against the backup data?
Yes, I will. So I will get into that, because there's a lot of things where tape falls short. So especially if you want to access a lot of your historical data, and especially if many customers at the same time want to access a lot of historical data. So I will promise I will get back to that, because that is key. So we wanted the service to be different. We weren't really having success with customers, and we wanted to change the whole thing. So we started from scratch. So we built Keepit, the Keepit we have today. We started over completely from scratch, where we designed an object store for the purpose of storing backup data, and then we went that whole journey, and that landed us with Keepit today, which is B2B, and we are cloud-to-cloud backup. Also, backup of the cloud, it's not, we're seeing consensus now that, okay, people understand that this is actually necessary. You buy into Microsoft and you expect that, well, Microsoft will keep the service running, which is true. They promise that they will keep it running most of the time. And of course, they're not going to just lose your data overnight if a hard drive fails. They have that covered. They're very good at what they do. But if you get ransomware, or if some Microsoft-wide attack on the infrastructure happens, they do not back up your data, and they're very clear about this. And this is beginning. I mean, this is something we see customers realizing, and that is where we come into the picture. So that is where you used to run your own file server, and you used to run your own backup, and you would keep the backup someplace separate from your file server. Now you move the file server into the cloud. You still need to have a backup, and it still needs to be separate from whichever cloud you put your file server into. There's also, we see regulation now. So for example, the NIS2 directive in the EU, we actually got written into the law there. So now many types of companies are legally required to have backup. So that's, we expect good things to come from that. Our main workload is 365, as Jerry alluded to. So we do have other workloads. We have a total of 8 workloads now. But what we see, and this is, now the graph will make sense. So if you look at how many different SaaS applications companies use, if you have a couple of thousand employees, you use something like 200 different cloud services. And people are just now starting to realize that we probably should have backup of our 365. Now, there's 199 others that they haven't even thought the thought yet. But this is, I mean, in the EU, this is becoming a legal requirement. If this service you're using is something you need for anything, you need to have backup of that. So, and we have the 8 workloads today, and that's a lot more than nothing. But we also see that there's something that needs to be addressed there, and that is the, yes?
But, well, don't you need more than just backups? Mm-hmm. You need to have a recovery policy. So you need to have all the stuff around backing up the data and installing it. And you need to have a culture that worries about recovery. And that seems to be much harder to put in place than just putting a tick in a box and back your data up somewhere.
And that's absolutely true. And so things like testing that, can I actually restore the things that I think I can restore? Absolutely.
Increasing the law, which used to say things like, do you have backups?
Yeah.
Now says, do you have a business recovery policy?
Yeah.
It's much more testing.
Yeah. Yes. And you see that also on a lot of these frameworks that people will, so the ISO 27001 or other of these information security frameworks, you will see that you have these documentation requirements that, yes, you say that you tested recoverability. When did you test it? What were the results? And show us the document. So yes, I think, I mean, these laws that are coming into, I mean, as much criticism as GDPR got when it came, and I'm sure NIS2 will have some too when it comes into effect. I think the laws are made for the right reasons, and then there are details that are not always amazing, but they, I mean, I think we're moving in the right direction, and we're doing the right thing, and we are helping companies will deal with security more professionally, more responsibly, and we're trying to be part of that.
So does that mean that you have partners which will do training in business resilience?
Yes,
like that?
that's also part of the partner story. So we got that question about why are we not just selling online? I mean, some of that is clearly awareness. If we had a web shop today, not a lot would happen in it. But also the trust and I mean, lots of smaller companies rely on these partners to guide them on their IT and to tell them, and often to run the IT for them. So we have a lot of managed service providers as partners. So that's where it's really useful to have these organizations. They are used to dealing with all of this, and they deal with that for 20 or 100 small businesses. So we want to be part of this. So we know that, so people aren't really realizing this yet. People are just realizing that, oh, this 365 should probably have backup, and we are happy to help with that. But they're going to realize that these 199 other services are also going to need backup. And we want to be part of that. And today with 8 workloads, that is not going to cut it. So we are moving in the direction of becoming a platform for backup and recovery of SaaS applications. So we will start running, we have some new technology coming that will allow us to significantly grow the number of workloads we support.
How is that going to happen? Is it technology where you don't have to write the connector to the target application?
Not entirely, but there's a lot of similarities in modern SaaS applications or modern web applications, and we can exploit those similarities so that the work we have to do to write a connector becomes really
putting an extra wrap around some base technology.
Yes. So we have built this. These 8 workloads that we have, we didn't get them by buying up competitors that happened to support that workload. We added the workload into our platform. So all of our platform features that work on 365, well, they work on Salesforce and Power and all of the other workloads as well. So the search engine is the same, and the underlying data storage is the same, etc. So what we so we built this engine to efficiently back up large amounts of data over the network and deal with unreliable networks and the remote service throttling us or the remote service failing and all of that.
But are you going to extend it to things like ServiceNow?
Yes.
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 I mean, is it AI-based?
No.
I
Well,
heard from a company which also does a lot of these connectors, and they do it with AI, and they speeding up of it, which is remarkable.
yes.
In 3 days.
Yes. Yeah. We went from, I think, 3 months to 1 day with this. So we can really do a lot. It's not AI based in the sense that everyone is talking about right now. Technically speaking, it is. I mean, it is an AI that makes these decisions about which things can run in parallel and how do we deal with throttling and all of that. But it's not an AI in the.
It's AI. It's more than.
Yeah. So it's not a large language model or anything like that. No. So. Yes. So we are moving to become a platform, and we hope to be able to talk a lot more about that in the future. So right now, we deal with the 8. In a year from now, that number should be very different, I would expect. This is Oscar. And this is a picture from one of our data centers. We can't take a lot of pictures most of the places, obviously. I want to talk about our platform, how we build it, and why we build it the way that we build it. So if you're a customer and you run you use some cloud service and now you want to back it up, you need to be sure that the backup is not located where the primary data is. So if you use 365, you need to pick a backup service that does not put the data back onto Azure. If you use Salesforce, you need to pick a backup service that does not put the data back into Amazon. And if you use your G Suite, obviously G Cloud is off the limits. And these 200 services you're probably already using, where exactly are you going to put the backup data for just a handful of those? When will you even know? So if Monday tomorrow runs on a different public cloud than they did yesterday, will you even know? I mean, maybe they will share that and maybe they won't. So this is going to be just completely unmanageable. And well, since we came from the hosting industry anyway, we were no foreigners to running a data center ourselves. So we decided that, well, for backup, the obvious choice is that we run our own infrastructure, so that we are not on Azure, we are not on AWS, because by running on our own infrastructure, we can absolutely guarantee the customer that no matter which service they back up using Keepit, the backup is going to be separate from the primary data. Yes?
You also backups. I mean, where do you back up your data center?
That's, yes, we don't, but let me get back to that. So we don't in the classical sense, because if we did, it would not be any good, because the amount of data we have, if we back that up onto tape, for example, and we lost the primary data, we would not be able to roll back in time for us to still have a business. So classical backup would not work. We solve that in a different way. So let me just, because I'm getting to that, I'm just wondering if I can touch upon it. So we run active. So we have these, so all of these 7 regions, whether it's Frankfurt or London or whichever region you're in, is always 2 data centers, and they're completely identical in terms of equipment. And we run them active. So all compute runs active. So half the time your backup job will run from one side, the other time it will run from the...
What is the distance of the 2 data centers?
That depends on the region. Because the reason we have 2 centers is not necessarily to protect against nuclear Armageddon, which we had earlier, but these common things that would commonly happen. So things like fire, flooding, power system failures, cooling system failures, these things. So
like availability zone in AWS, that they are close but independent.
Yes. So we could have them. Architecturally, our system architecture would allow us to have further distance between them than we have now. Typically, it's somewhere between from a few to maybe 30 kilometers, depending on the region. Because for fire, that's fine. For flooding, that's fine. But we look at the geography when we pick a region. So, for example, for flooding, we make sure in Frankfurt, for example, we don't want both of them to be right on the edge of the same river, for example. So.
What about fiber optic cables? Because there used to be a problem with shared fiber optics. Getting ready, isn't it, at one point?
Network infrastructure-wise, when we have these, so I should say the 6 or 7 now, including Switzerland, the 7 regions are completely independent of each other. So they have no common, there's no single authentication infrastructure, for example. So if you have a Keepit account, you will log in the region where you are. And if all the other regions are down, yours will still be fine. But a region with the 2 data centers, we have our own interconnects. So we have we rent fiber optic connections. So we rent dedicated fibers. Okay. So we have 2 fibers going separate routes between the data centers, and then in each data center, we run our own internet routing infrastructure as well. So we have our own IP space and our own PGP addresses and all of that. So we will have peering with the other cloud vendors over an internet exchange. We will have that in both of the sites. And we will have connectivity to other providers as well. And some places we even have dedicated links to Microsoft. So even if we lose a full site, the other site will still have, everything will still be working. As a customer, you shouldn't notice even if a full site is down.
Do you have an SLA in terms of your uptime?
Yes, we do, and I don't remember off the top of my head what it is. And frankly, that's a topic that's up for discussion, because really, so this is a backup service, and so if we were down for half a day, you probably wouldn't know, because how often do you restore? And
But you haven't restored that day, you've noticed.
Yes, you would notice if you needed to restore. True. So of course we have to be up. We have to be available, but it's just different from a primary workload.
Yeah.
And the SLAs that we have written in our policies reflect that of what you would typically expect from a primary data provider, which doesn't really make sense. On the other hand, what you would care about for your backup is that, do my backups run on time? And do they actually contain the data that I expect them to contain? And yeah, to your point earlier, I mean, can I actually read my older backups? Do they still work? And those are things that we do promise a backup frequency. So we aim for 2 backups a day. We promise 1 with an asterisk, because if you add so much data that we cannot pull it out in a day, well, obviously we cannot give you a backup in a day. I think so. This is something where we just see I don't think the market or the consensus around what should I really expect from a cloud backup service, that's not really mature.
What about the warranty? Because I can imagine if you're down, you refund the license for that day, but the cost to the firm may be hundreds of times the cost of the license.
Yes.
And you probably don't warranty the follow-on cost from the backup.
No. Well, so we have some places, especially the US was interesting, because there we have to be. I mean, we have in the different regions we need to abide by the law. And there are some, of course, we have some liability, and we have some caps on liability also. So if we really lose all your data in a region, God forbid, then there would be some.
Yeah, there must be a cap, because if it's unlimited, you just go bankrupt.
Yes.
And then you've got no backup anyway.
Yes, exactly. That doesn't help anyone.
Yeah, but
Do you snapshot or do you make full back?
So none of these cloud services are built with backup in mind. So none of them have APIs that are made for backup. So what we do is we use the APIs that the users would use, basically. So when we back up your Exchange, we use Exchange Web Services and Graph and these available APIs. They have no snapshot capability. But we have invested really heavily in building our connectors, as we call them, so that they use the least possible amount of, we download as little data as possible.
Do increment?
Yes, we do incremental forever. And I will talk more, so yeah, we can, actually I didn't plan to talk about that. I'm happy to talk about it. Our storage technology, we designed an object store for the purpose of running backups. So it's API-wise, it's a worm store, so it's write-only. You can append backup data, but you can never alter existing data. We simply didn't implement the ability to alter an existing file. So even if someone were to compromise our systems and fully control the API, you couldn't actually tell the storage system to modify a file. It wouldn't know what you were talking about.
If you have a time attack, so you actually corrupt the data without actually exhibiting any symptoms, just in the background, eventually your backups will have.
Yes. If you could corrupt the in-flight data, yes, and you could do that over a period of maybe 10 years. If the customer has 10 years of retention, then yes, you would eventually have corrupted the whole thing, and the customer didn't test restore for 10 years.
Yes.
Yeah, to your point. Yes.
So you said you designed your own object stores that are compliant with S3, or is that completely your own proprietary?
It's completely our own proprietary.
Completely and with write-only, your costs will continue to go up forever because you're incremental forever write-only.
Yes, so that it was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. So we also but it's a great observation. So when we set up a storage system, so this is, I should explain the rack. I mean, these are our storage systems. So these are standard 1-unit servers and standard disk chassis. So we have 80 some hard drives in each chassis. So in a rack like this, we have about 8 petabyte usable on these older systems, around 10 petabytes for the newest ones. And so when we set up systems like that, they age And we have customers that pay for 100 years of retention, but these systems are not going to be around in 100 years. And we want to switch them off a long time before that. So we need to migrate data between systems anyway. And knowing that we had to do that anyway, we thought, okay, we will do basically a copy and garbage collector, just with storage systems. So what we're doing is that I probably need to explain a little bit more about how the objects are interlinked. So when we store a backup set on these, I mean, you have, let's say you have files in folders, right? So the way we store that in our object store is we upload your individual files as objects, and then we make a container object that references these file objects. So we have this tree structure, but the object store is content addressable. So like a blockchain, we have each object is addressed or named by the hash of its content, which means it gives us a really strong, so it gives us cryptographically strong consistency guarantees. But it also means that if I just know the hash of the root, no matter how many objects in your backup set, you can have 2 billion objects in your backup set. If I have the hash of the root, I know that if I follow that all the way down, I can validate that all of these files are like they used to be. When we then do the second backup, to your point with the incremental versus full, we store it as a full. So we download we look at what we had previously, and we download the changes, and then we create a new tree, and that tree spans the full backup set. So it looks like a full backup, except we're just referencing the same file from 2 different containers, the old version and the new version.
You're storing them inside a blockchain.
Yes, or it's a Merkle tree, technically, but yes.
Okay.
So it's not cryptocurrency, it's not public ledger,
But that means you can, A, verify the contents of each section, and B, the sections can be strung together to create the full from the incremental.
Yes.
It also means you can delete stuff, doesn't it?
Yes.
And that worries me because if I'm being sued by somebody and they want to look at all the data I've kept about X, Y, Z, I would like to have deleted it.
Yes. These are excellent questions. Thank you very much. So, and also GDPR has some things about deletion. So, and we know. so what we do is we have this list of root hashes, and those we can delete. So I can say, the backup set that you had last Thursday, we can make that go away. That means we will no longer reference it, but the objects will still live in the object store. So they will stay there, and they can stay there for a while, because it's like, so when you delete a file on your computer, you delete the link to the data, but you don't necessarily overwrite the underlying data. So that's sort of what we do initially. And then after a while, so we have this offline schedule where we refresh data on the systems.
And get rid of all the deleted stuff.
Exactly. So we do a copy and garbage collection. So we go through all of the active trees, so all of the trees that are actually still in use by anyone, still in retention, they get copied off to new systems. And then we just
continuously, you will continue to increase your cost. Remember, every time you get a 100-year retention policy, you have to refresh that physical system every X number of years. You're buying the same capacity over and over and over again.
True.
Even with the 30% decrease in aerial density and cost, your cost never goes down.
No, that's not. So
you're buying it over and over again. So across the 100 years, the cost of storing the initial data it continues to grow and grow, irrespective of the cost of your aerial density.
So the customer is also on a subscription, so they pay us every month.
Sure.
But the amount of data gets bigger.
Yes, the amount of data gets bigger, but also, yes. So we see that. So our cost of purchasing a gigabyte drops over the years because systems get more efficient, get better. So the new systems we buy have more capacity. They're roughly the same cost, but the capacity just grows.
Sure, you're saying you're going to refresh it every time, right? Every time you refresh it, you're consuming more capacity.
Yeah. We don't throw out perfectly good systems. So we manage our
But
hardware.
they will die.
Yeah, they will die after a while. So we use them for as long as it makes sense, and then we get rid of them. So we have.
How do you address objects which are hashed and the hash is just raised, as you said, and now it turns out that somebody wants exactly the one of the objects you don't have a hash in? How do you get there?
You can't, and that's the whole point.
But I mean, what is the point of keeping it if you don't, if you are in case not able to address it?
Yeah. So the reason we don't want to, so there's multiple reasons we don't want to be able to delete an object. I guess that's what I guess you.
If you keep it,
Yeah.
you will also
So-
want to be able to address it. If you're not able to address it, just keep it can as well throw it away.
Yes, and that's what we do. So that is the cycle. So we didn't implement deletion in the object store because first of all, security-wise, it is hugely beneficial to not have to worry about that in a backup architecture where we really don't want someone who compromises a system to be able to create trouble for our customers. That's one side of it. The other side is, if you look at file system design, so we made a really efficient object store for backup data. And it's not because we were smarter than everyone else who built file systems. It's because we didn't build very much of a file system. So by not supporting modification of data and by not supporting deletion of data, we do not have fragmentation and we do not really have an allocation problem. So these really difficult problems that have really have been the focus of file system design for so many decades, they're just not problems for us. And these are the reasons why we keep the objects around without deleting them, because it solves a million problems for us to not immediately delete the object. We need to delete them longer term, and we do that with the copy and garbage collector. But if we can leave them for
Because the law does not recognize computer science. So if a court says that the data in contention may still be in this object store, so you should go and look for it and determine whether it's really been deleted so it can be found.
Yeah. We went through that with some lawyers actually, because that is a concern. Yeah. And the position is, and I mean, we won't know until it happens, but the position is that a court would not do that because it would be unreasonable. I mean, the number.
So the US, if you're playing in the US, the judge won't care, and there's plenty of examples of that.
But
so yeah.
So the objects we will be looking for. First of all, we cannot link them back to who had them. You can look at them and then you can say, that sounds like it could be from this customer, but you won't actually know. You won't have a strong guarantee that was the case. Second is that there will be so many billions of objects that actually doing it. I mean, even though, of course, theoretically, yes, it's possible to write a system that addresses all the objects and looks at them, but the time required, I mean, we may...
GDPR has an exception, doesn't it? You can say it would cost too much to do this, and the court might insist on you doing it. Yeah. But I'm not sure whether that applies to all jurisdictions. No. You're saying
in the US, if the court says, I want it tomorrow, it doesn't care.
Yeah.
If you don't turn up with tomorrow, then you're guilty of it. That's simple, right? Yeah. So that's a legal issue that you have to deal with your customer.
Yes.
And with over 1,200 sets of laws around the world, most of which conflict with each other, again, that's your problem. Not anybody else's.
I think there's a lot of that sort of problems there. Yeah. So
still the problem with storage space. I mean, all these objects need space, and the customer has to pay for it.
Yes, exactly. So. I was really planning on going through this later. But I'll do it now. So the cost we have, so we are far below the cost of any tier on you can get on public cloud, no matter what you commit to. So this has been. I mean, we use spinning disks. So we use large capacity spinning disks. So they're I think they're 22 terabytes now or so, and we run them in large RAID arrays, so large multi-parity RAID arrays. And because we wrote the object store, so we don't, so the operating system does not have a file system on these drives. We address the drives as block devices. So we pack the objects on the drives. We pick which objects go where and why. So we have, the way we can pack objects allows us to run these larger than usual multi-parity RAID devices. So the economy we have in this, the economy we have for storing the data is just, well, a second to none. So it's just, so when we have, I can't share our profit, but when we have investors looking at the solution and they look at the numbers, they say, congratulations. It's just really, really, I mean, this has really worked out for us, which is also why we can be cash flow positive when we don't do too much marketing. So,
I suggest you could always copy out the deleted stuff tape, and it wouldn't really matter. But it sounds like there's probably no point because
no, that would be a legal problem, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So about restore, to restore data, we saw a solution today which makes it able to restore single fields in whatever kind of databases.
Yeah.
And I mean, the way you do it, I would think that this is not possible with you. I would say you can. I just guess. I don't know.
Yeah. So because of this structure, so this Merkle tree structure, when you scroll through the history of your backup sets, you enter one of these trees, and it doesn't matter whether it's yesterday's trees or yesteryear's tree. It's just the same, and all of the objects are online in the object store, and all objects are immediately addressable. So,
But I mean, if I have a record of customer and the record has, let's say, 50 fields, then one object is one record. Can I address part of that record and exchange it?
You can so getting a single object is virtually immediate.
Well, yeah.
I mean it's a single disk read.
Yes, but this is a part of an object. It's not an object, but part of the object. Can you do that?
We do not have functionality where we take a part of an object and put back. We would always take the full object and put back. I guess the granularity of the object, of course, is important. So when we back up your 365, if we look at your emails, then your emails would be individual objects. And you would browse your mailbox, basically like you see it in Outlook, and you can restore a single mail, but you wouldn't be able to restore half a mail, for example. It would be object level. Same with your documents in your OneDrive, and so on.
But just to restore, do you have warranties for restore time? Because we happen to lose a whole lot.
Yeah.
I'm fully backed up online. It's great for individual files, but it would take me about 6 months to restore the whole of them.
Yes.
Photographic data.
Yeah, and there's no number that I can give that would be true, no matter what number I came with. So what we see is that it's typically the other end throttling us. So in terms of Microsoft, so for example, so SharePoint is a good example. So SharePoint is this legacy on-premise service that was shoveled into the cloud, and it's being used for a great many things that it was never meant to do. And a lot of companies rely on this and have third-party integrations that were also maybe not built to be used at the scale that they are used at. So especially with SharePoint, but also other things, we see these huge problems with throttling, where it can be really difficult to even just get the first backup down. So some customers have that. We have invested really heavily in this, and we can see, so compared to the market, we are, well, I have to say that, but I really mean that we are really good at getting data out of Microsoft, and we are also good at putting it back. But you can absolutely, if you have 300,000 SharePoint sites, and you lose them all and you want to get them back, well, I can say that we are not the bottleneck, but I cannot tell you how long it's going to take, because...
But what you're really saying, I think, is that somebody has to design the recovery solution. That has to be the customer, not you. You can enable that solution, but there has to be somebody there that understands what the requirements are for business continuity.
Yes, absolutely.
that is a discipline which is well understood, but not everybody has.
Yes.
And if you don't employ somebody who actually understands
Yes.
business recovery, you may get stuck.
Yeah. Yes. But I think this sort of well, it doesn't solve itself, but we see larger customers typically have organizations that deal with this, right? So they have the old backup administrators, or they have other parts of the security organization. They have people that care about this and know about this, and that will ask questions and test.
But then I did some of this once with Big Bang.
Yeah.
I've told the story earlier today that they managed to restore all their systems. They didn't realise the telephone exchange didn't have enough lines to do the business. Yes. So they understood the problem very much, that part of the problem, but not the whole problem.
Yes.
Could I ask you a question to clarify my understanding? If I got a full backup stored on a disk, let us say it's so many terabytes long, then to get it back from a disk is one disk access. I just stream the whole file back. Let me finish, please.
Yeah.
I just stream the whole file back. If I'm recovering the same backup data from your system, which is stored as a whole sequence of incrementals, and each incremental is a separate object, then doesn't it follow that each incremental is a separate disk access, and therefore streaming that data back from you doesn't happen? It just takes longer.
So the
And
well, so
you're
you're
random access because it's
Yes.
not stored
Yes.
sequentially.
Yeah. So, and yes, you're absolutely right. And so, a couple of things to that. There's, yeah. So the individual objects can be up to 8 megabytes. So we do have. I mean, there's some streaming in that. But yes, you're absolutely right that a large data set is going to be a lot of individual object reads. So this was a trade-off. Because in order to have the compact storage, where we basically deduplicate over time, we had to do this. We couldn't have it both ways.
Yeah.
So this was a compromise. How we make up for this, because you're absolutely right that this is a performance penalty, a significant one, potentially. What we did was, when we built the object store, we made sure that the way we pack the objects on the disks, even though we have large multi-parity RAID arrays, a logical read is one logical read, one cold, uncached logical read is one physical disk read. So I don't read from all the disks in this drive. I know which disk the object is on in its entirety, which means that when I parallelize, which we do when we do restores, when we parallelize, then
of course you know the list of objects you're going to get.
Exactly.
So you do it in parallel.
Yes, we do them in parallel, and we have and because we have no read amplification, which you would always, if you went out and had a standard storage system, you would have read amplification. So one cold read would be maybe 100 physical reads, because you have to look up in metadata tables and you have to read across the RAID array and all of that. We have just one physical read, so that's unique.
Right.
You have a situation.
Yes.
Sorry.
But with access to different.
So one hard disk read. So only one hard disk does a read. So if I issue a GET API call against one of these storage systems, only one hard drive will do a little blink, because I have the because of the hashing of the objects, we scale the RAM with the disk. So we have at the moment when we have, so a system with 2.5 petabytes of usable storage has a roughly 1 terabyte of RAM. That means we have all of the metadata in RAM. So when you do a GET against these systems, I will do a hashed lookup in RAM to see if I have the object. And so I can give you a 404 without even looking at the disks. So 404 is really fast. And if I need to return the object, that lookup will give me the disk number and the address and the link.
If I want to have full object, I would need to get all the increments, which are not.
No. So the objects are always in their entirety on one disk, and there's a caveat there too, of course, because if we had arbitrarily large objects, then we couldn't do this. So we have a maximum object size of 8 megabytes. So if you have 8 megabytes. So if you have a larger document, then we will cut it up into pieces, and then it will be multiple.
But 8 megabytes isn't very much.
No, no.
So it means if you have a bigger object, you may have an unlimited number of reads to get that.
Yeah, not unlimited, but yes, you will have multiple. Absolutely.
Depending on the size of the object.
Yes.
How many of your reads, I mean, you must have some statistics on that.
Yeah.
How many % of your reads are more than one object? Yes, because of the size.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. So I will say, though, that I believe most of our objects would be email, and those would tend to be under 8 megabytes.
Yes.
But
It's all very workload dependent, isn't it?
excuse me?
It's all very workload dependent. I'm sure you could
Very
come up
much.
with workload which wouldn't suit your system.
Yes. Yeah.
And the average workload for
Yes.
most companies may
So-
well suit your system.
Exactly, and we had that. So we've done that compromise before. So when we started support for, it was Azure AD back then. Now it's Entra ID, right? The objects there are, so this whole LDAP structure is just extremely compact, and the objects were tiny, and we compressed them, and it was just so that wouldn't be a good match. And what we did instead was that we rolled them up, and then we store many more of them together, because in the end, if you want to find one of them, it doesn't matter if I read the large object or the smaller object. It's easy to find the component. So we can do compromises like that.
And also, presumably, cache was cheap, so you all these reads and things aren't exactly diskettes moving there.
No. But so when we're actually getting data out of the object store, those will tend to be cold reads. I think we have very little benefit from disk caching there, because it's a large customer base. You never know who does a restore, and if they restore something, it's probably weeks old, so it's not going to be in RAM.
If most restores are 1 or 2 objects,
Yeah.
You can probably live with, rather than thought perhaps to live with the fact that a complete restore might take some time.
Yeah. But I mean, these small restores, I mean, restore mailbox or restore an email, I mean, they you issue the restore job, and then it starts, and then it completes. I mean, these are really simple, straightforward.
Do you offload to archive?
No. So if you have a company with 100 years of backup history, we will eventually, or someone will eventually have, systems holding objects that are 100 years old.
Okay, but I mean, some people would say that it's cheaper to hold it.
Yes.
Archive.
Absolutely.
Archives.
Absolutely. So are you thinking tape specifically? Or?
For example, yes,
Yeah,
mostly.
yeah,
of course,
yeah.
because it's cheaper.
True. And that's another compromise, right? Because it's a good point. One of the things is it wouldn't do what we want to do, right? So if you go back in time and say, now I want to restore this old document, and we say, oh, you have to wait for 5 minutes. That's not what we wanted to do. So we set out to build something where everything is instant. We want this to be completely natural. Just scroll back in time. We don't care how long. Scroll back in time, click the document, there you go. That's what we wanted to do.
For about incremental, you can do something else, okay?
It's difficult. Another thing is that since we deduplicate over time, we can't even tell if we won't know if an object may have come in a long time ago. It may still be in your most recent backup set, or it may reappear in a backup set in 2 weeks from now. Something we moved to disk, to tape. So it's really difficult to. I mean, we've talked a lot about this, because obviously it would be nice to not have everything on disk. But where we have landed with this is that we have an extremely cost-effective way of storing all of this on disk. So the disk is, I mean, it's really, I'm not sure that we could actually put this on tape cheaper.
Did you say you deduplicate objects?
Yes, so the objects are hashed. So we cannot store the same object twice for the same customer on a storage system. So
Again, please. You cannot.
yes. So if you upload a document once and then you upload the same document again, the storage server is not going to write it, because it was there already.
And if it's an increment, then it's some change, and you have the same hash, but
Yes.
you don't have the same document, and it goes to
then you will be on the front page of Time magazine because it's a share 256 hash. So no one has managed to produce a conflict yet. So we will, but I mean it's in theory that it's a valid concern. But
key to the dash key if you want to be towards that, and more trust of provision.
yeah.
If you're backing up the typical Microsoft email, which is 5 words with about
Yes.
half a gigabyte of
Yes.
junk before and afterwards,
Yes.
are you backing up that junk every
Yes.
time?
Yes,
Why
we
just
are.
point to that particular...
Yes, I would love to have an elegant solution to that. We don't have an elegant solution to that.
Well, business,
So-
so you just tokenize it,
Yeah.
and all the header junk in the email file is stored onto the token.
Yeah, a lot of the headers are actually unique, but yeah, all of these attachments with the signatures, with the images in them, and we don't do anything clever with that at the moment.
It's a pity that
You
Microsoft
can-
design it better.
You can think to use a multi-part.
Yes, yeah, we could decompose.
Save on file.
Yes.
For reply of
Yeah.
reply of reply.
You're absolutely right. So we could do things, and then you have the overhead of more objects. So
Yeah.
so it's a compromise. Right now we're extremely efficient at storing these repeated attachments with images. So
You mentioned the two, but you also do compression of
yes,
and encryption.
yes.
Okay, so when you dismiss server, you don't
Yeah,
have to
we
take care of.
So we shred the hard drive. So when we get rid, so we never move hard drives out of a data center. So we keep failed hard drives never go back to the vendor. We keep them there, and then when we eventually get rid of them, they are mechanically shredded. So but even if someone managed to go and steal one, it would be encrypted. So yeah.
The thing that worries me still a little bit is the deletion. I think the most important part of the document lifecycle, in some ways, is to delete it when you no longer need it. Because the last thing you want to have lying around is stuff that could be used against you that you didn't need to
Yeah,
keep.
no, so we see this. So with customers, when customers go and buy backup, they have these, they really need to think about the retention because we can't sell. So as I said, we have customers that pay for 100 years.
Yeah.
We also have customers that pay for 1 year. And some customers, so especially in the US, they will say that, the email law says I have to hold it for 3 months, so I want 3 months retention and not a day more because anything there's a liability. And then you have documents and that's different. And that's where the customer also needs to
But you need
make the decision.
a policy-based interface, I think,
Yeah.
because you don't want to say, in terms of keeping stuff for things, you want to have a policy that says stuff should be kept according to law number X, Y, Z
Yeah.
in business terms, but it can relate to.
It's these as it is now, the customer needs to make the decision of which parts of the data set do they want which retention on, and for us as a vendor to go in and specifically understand each law of the 73 countries we have customers in that.
I think it would be one of the problems with all this sort of stuff. Then is decisions are made by the IT group, not by the business.
I think
And
that's
the IT group gets it wrong.
I think that's a switch also we're seeing. So now where it used to be you had the backup people and they would do the backup. But now the backup people are oftentimes gone because you don't have anything on premise more. So, but now you have these different groups in the company just buying cloud services left and right. And they don't know about backup and they don't know about auditing, who has access to the system and all of that. And then you have a central security organization in the company because that suddenly matters. And now that security organization needs to go and find out who bought which service, did they audit, who has login, do they have backup, and so on and so forth. So I think that we are going to see that some of these, that the people we will be talking to in the future are going to be more this centralized for security function or...
I don't know, and it strikes me as being salarization. I worry about, I've worked in banks with centralized security functions, and it's much better if the policies are instantiated at the business level in the business group, because the central organisation doesn't understand it thinks it understands the business, but it often doesn't.
Yeah.
And it makes mistakes.
Yeah. But also, yeah, right now when you have the
Anarchy.
exactly. Yeah, but anarchy. Yeah, exactly. That's. I think there's a switch going on there anyway.
Oh yes, some control is better than no control at all.
Yes.
What's the longest retention you've got? Let me try the question again. Your longest continuous, yes, thank you. Longest contract you've had so far in terms of data retention?
Yes. So the longest one I know of is we have a few customers that pay for 100 years, but obviously they don't have. Yes, exactly, and that's obviously less than 100 years. So yes, I don't know actually. I would
then
guess.
Let's put it in round terms. Is it less than 10 years or more than 10 years?
It will be around 10 years because that was around the time where we started doing cloud backup.
How do you have data retention for 100 years? Because if you're keeping a Microsoft XML document or something like that,
Yes.
how do you know that you've got the software to actually read the XML
Yes,
document
and
in years' time?
it's an excellent point, and it's just we solve a lot of problems. We don't solve all the problems. So we can give you back your document, but if Microsoft no longer gives you software so that you can read it, that's we're not addressing
That's
that.
not
You
their
read the
problem.
law. The law never said you had to
Yeah.
supply the data. And it was,
Yeah, I mean that's gonna
Yeah, it's like
maybe there were.
it's not their problem.
That's kind of shared responsibility
Laws say-
model.
Some laws say that you have to give the government the data, and it's their job to interpret it. Other laws say you have to give them the data in a human readable
It's
form.
still your problem,
And it's
not
your
theirs.
problem. Oh, it's not their problem. No.
Yeah,
No.
that's the point.
Well,
we don't
it's
care.
indirectly their problem because if I'm buying a solution, I expect them to
You're buying a
enable.
backup.
I think that falls into shared responsibility though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't.
Well, yeah, I don't expect you to solve it.
It might be an add-on service when we get to that point, right?
Yeah.
So, let me just move on because we're almost out of time. So, yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about sovereignty and this having your backup be independent from your primary data. So, Microsoft was recently compromised. The storm hack, where a group of hackers had access to exchange infrastructure across all of Europe and the US, including the duty and government clouds. And they had access for something like 2 years, and it was a customer that noticed. That's that. I mean, Microsoft is very good at what they do, but things happen. So when you have one infrastructure, when you have an infrastructure-wide attack, that infrastructure is vulnerable. And that is why we have this notion of the ring, right? You have this one ring to bind it all together. So if you were to store your backup data on Azure, you would have your primary data and your backup data on Azure, and you could set up policies to say, oh, but I want it in this Azure region or that Azure region, and I want a replica in this other Azure region. That's all well and good, but if there's a successful attack against the Azure infrastructure, your backup lives with your primary data on the same infrastructure, and this is a message that we are trying to get out because there's also a lot of push for not getting that message out. Microsoft, for example, is launching a product which is going to be a great product, but they call it backup. But what it does is it snapshots onto Azure, which is as an engineer that's not backup.
You've got some very, very interesting technology.
I think so.
Unique, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
How does that translate itself into a customer realizing that they should use Keepit SaaS backup for MS365 rather than 20 others?
Yeah, and that's why we're here, honestly, because this is very difficult. Because when you look at two competing products, I mean, they both tick the same boxes, they do the same thing. There's no apparent difference. And so it is a hard message to get across. So a lot of...
If Microsoft is selling a competitor, because if Microsoft sells something called backup,
Yeah.
90% of their customers will just say, well, it's Microsoft, we understand it, it's backup.
Yeah.
Here, we all know what backup means. That's the one I'm going to have to use.
Exactly. And
Why
that's
don't you simply list up the USPs which really make you
we
different?
try to do that. So I think we're doing a pretty good job of that now. So
No, I mean just for us also, the most
Yeah.
important points
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't want to bring this up.
Mostly, but
The second or third thing that, I'm sorry,
Jerry.
You said was, we are not unique. That's the basic.
In terms of lots of companies back up M365.
Oh, yeah, you
The
said
number that then back up Enter ID starts to drop. The number that then back up to their own data centers and then roll in data sovereignty drops even more. If we then start talking about other workloads, we then do become unique. So we're not
I'm
unique.
just quoting you back.
Yeah,
that's all.
absolutely. And that goes to Chris's question. Lots of people do this. Lots of people do a fraction of what we do, or an element. And yes, another, and I don't want to pick on anyone,
That's fine.
will do certain jobs. We will now say to larger enterprises, if you're backing up M365 and you're not backing up Enter ID, you're leaving the door half open.
Okay.
So in terms of USPs, how many M365 backup companies then back up Enter ID to their own data centers, not using public cloud, and able to offer data sovereignty?
I had a look on your website and I found pricing which is impressive, but I didn't find if the pricing is for each service separately. So it's each service per seat per month.
Yes.
Or is there pricing differentiation between the different services?
So the list, I believe the list prices on our website are across the services, right? But I think it's also fair to say that when you buy multiple services, then it's not necessarily those prices that you're looking at, without going into your territory too much.
That's absolutely
You start
right.
with one service, and if you buy 5 of them, you get a reduction, for example.
Yes.
Basically, yes.
Basic. Okay.
What I'm hearing you say is that we're more reliable than X others M365 backup supplier because we have our own data centers,
Yes.
and so we can support data sovereignty better.
Yeah. Yes.
Is that
So.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry. Sorry. No, I wasn't know who was going to answer the
Not
question.
the only one who does that. I mean,
Who
I
does?
just met a French company, is another press to do exactly the same. They put their own data centers,
Yeah, okay.
back up
Yeah.
on their own
Smart
data.
move.
For which product?
I don't know for which.
Is it
I just
Salesforce
the idea
backup?
To build or to
Yeah.
construct own data centers to back up other customers' data is like
I think that might be a Salesforce
mixture of
backup
this hash
company. Yeah.
technology, RAM, and this
Yeah.
increment technology and the own data center, which makes
Yeah, yes, yes. I think our investment in being efficient at pulling data in and out of these other APIs is really a big differentiator.
I mean, it seems to me, as I said before, that the big problem is maturity for customers.
Yes.
That
Awareness.
you can outsource execution, you can't outsource responsibility.
Exactly.
And the customer has to know
Yeah.
what they're trying to achieve, why they're
Yeah.
doing it, and what the implications are.
Yeah.
And you might partner with a training firm to actually help people through that. But somebody, the customer, has to actually understand the implications of what they're doing. They can't just say, well, let's press a button and buy Keepit and not worry about it. They have to have thought about it.
Interesting enough, the question you asked about, well, why wouldn't you just go to Microsoft? They're actually generating massive awareness for Keepit by publicly declaring that you're not backed up. Because you used to find it on page 24 of your T's and C's. Now they're saying we have a backup product.
Okay.
So I would just love to.
Microsoft software came out with terms and conditions that said we don't guarantee this is fit for purpose. We don't guarantee that it works.
Yeah.
If your business goes broke using our software, we don't care.
It sounds like a US contract.
Yeah.
But I think with GDPR, this awareness is just getting through because
Yes,
it takes
totally.
immense amount of money if they don't.
Yeah,
Careful.
and this tool will do that also. And I think things are moving in the right direction. I would love to just touch briefly upon vendor independence. So if we have time,
Yeah.
a few minutes. We built this whole software stack to run on off-the-shelf hardware. So we are not relying on any specialized equipment or specialized, I mean, we use Dell today, we could use any other vendor tomorrow. And this is just, it's just really useful for us to be, I mean, we have, by running our own infrastructure, we have the burden of needing to deal with hardware and shipments and customs and all of these things, but we also have agency. So we have the ability to manage, I mean, how much spare capacity do we want? How do we want to plan this? What do we want to invest in having security for that? So in the early days of COVID, these large public clouds were shutting down non-emergency customers. So in order to have capacity for emergency services, so if you were some random company, a backup vendor, for example, and you were on public cloud, you could wake up one morning and your service would just be offline. And Amazon or Azure would have said, yeah, sorry, we're a little short on capacity, so we'll get you back up, as soon as we have space for you.
It's stuff we can do that.
Yeah, of course. And that's, I mean, these things happen, and we don't want that to happen. So I think it has really worked out for us in terms of having, in terms of availability, being able to offer the service that we actually want to offer to the customers. So the final things around efficiency, we've touched upon it, and the operational efficiency. I mean, how well we pack your data onto these systems and how economically we can run them. So there's a lot of different aspects of that. So one of them is that we can actually be cash flow positive. We don't need to burn venture capital in order to have the price list that we have. We can actually make money off of that. So that means we will be around, which is a good thing. If you want us to hold your backup. There's also a green story to that. So because if we use less equipment and if we burn less power, well, I mean, the data center is already fully electric. We're not trying to transition from diesel to electric. We are electric already, but we burn less electricity. So if you have a company, we burn something like, it's a couple of milliwatts per seat, actually, if you average it all out. So like an LED per employee will be the electricity cost of running backup and Keepit. Just to put things into perspective for how are systems engineered commonly, how are many commonplace systems built, and how have we approached this? So we were looking at getting a CM system, so for security monitoring of our logs, and we got an offer from one of the most common vendors, and they told us that in order to process the logs that our infrastructure generates, just to process the logs, we would need more hardware than we have in total now. So we would need to more than double our hardware footprint just to have that system process our logs. And that's, so, yeah, we haven't built things like that. We're really frugal on resources, and we think we didn't build it to be green, but I mean, this is part of, it ties together, right? Conserving resources, which ultimately also means conserving the customer's money.
I'm sure that's going to be more important as time goes on, that people will be able to sell the fact that they're not contributing to the problem.
Yes.
But your data centers, they could do things like use water to recycle heat. They could heat your offices.
Yes. So we use Equinix most places of the world, and I believe that in all of the regions we're 100% renewable power, right? That is, yes, that was...
Certificate.
Yes.
Everyone knows that certificates from Norway mean that no electricity is moved, but only numbers and certificates.
Yeah. But this has been, so globally, this has been, a couple of places it has been more difficult to get this done. But, yeah.
I have one very trivial question.
Please.
You started with the fact that you're very proud you're Danish, but your business cards do not reflect that, and your website does not reflect that. Is there a reason for that?
Does not reflect that we're Danish?
Yeah, it was. Well, I mean, it was it was started.
I think from a sales perspective, how we treat our employees and how we treat our customers, to me, the culture center is massively important for me.
Okay.
Do we reflect that on our website? We have to have a global presence. I think we reflect that in the way we treat ourselves and our customers. I think it's the most important part to our story.
I mean, we've been working with Keepit for a few weeks. They're adding to the client. From the word go, from the first meeting, it was actually obvious because you can imagine I've done a lot of
Sure, of course, yeah.
and it actually came across multiple times. I can't remember now what we're talking about, but it was peppered a lot of whole meetings. So maybe there's kind of changes on the website that don't make it very clear. But if you spend some one-on-one time with, a bit longer than this, it starts, it's pretty obvious.
Okay.
It's also more important is experience. But you could imagine a company claiming to be wonderful because it's from server approach or something, but it's actually what the people like and the customer experience you get is what matters. So I think I find it quite refreshing that you're not claiming you're Danish throughout your website. You should be demonstrating this by the way in which you service your customers, not about your website close. But
And I'm really sorry that guys.
One question, Flip.
Absolutely, Chris.
You've got a core backup engine to which you add wrappers for each SaaS application.
Correct.
Why can't you provide a software development kit to SaaS app providers so they could provide a wrapper? And that way you could expand your population and protected SaaS apps enormously.
Yes, and we have, we thought about that, I have to say, because it is a very good idea. Two things. One thing is we need to find out how we would monetize that, because right now we sell seats. So that's another thing I actually didn't touch upon on the economy side. We sell seats. There's no egress or ingress fees. There's no transaction fees. So when customers want to get the data out, it doesn't cost them extra. It's actually there for the use, which also means if you want to do analytics on it or to train a large language model or whatever you may want to choose to do with your historical data set, you can get all of it fairly efficiently because it's online on spinning disk. It doesn't cost you extra. So, but the if some service provider used our SDK to put data into our platform, we couldn't really price it on seats because they would be telling us how many seats it was. So we would probably need to sell in gigabytes, which we could do, but we really wanted to stay out of it because as soon as you go into selling gigabytes, that's just people are going to compare with, what is the cost of a USB stick in Tesco, and it's but it's. I mean, it's
technically it's possible.
Technically, it's possible. Absolutely.
You don't want
Yeah,
to know.
and then also, I mean, we would need to form a partnership with one of these service providers, and people are just now waking up to the fact that you're Monday and your HR system, and they also need backup. People are just waking up to that. So going out and trying to partner with these seemed difficult to convince them to invest in something that may not be something they could monetize.
So you wrap it yourself.
Yeah. For now, but this may change. So,
I mean, could you be an open source marketplace?
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot. So there's a lot of really interesting things that we could do, and I'm quite sure some of them will happen.
The reason I like marketplace is that I'm taking a backup for 100 years. I'd like some assurance that there is a community that may last 100 years, even if your particular firm goes broke.
Yeah.
And I find that, communities are part of the safety net.
Yes. Yeah.